Welcome to the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. Today we will be chatting with T.L. Bequette, aka Todd, a criminal defense attorney and author. Beckett's debut novel, Good Looking, the first novel in the Joe Turner mystery series, received excellent reviews and numerous awards, including the 2022 Independent Press Award in Crime Fiction. Longtime Dead, the most recent novel in the Joe Turner mystery series, will be released mid-August. Todd has been a criminal defense attorney for the past 30 years. The majority of his practice involves defending accused murderers. Todd has earned degrees from the University of the Pacific and Georgetown Law School. He serves annually on faculty of the Stanford Law School Trial Advocacy Clinic. He's passionate about prison reform, the unbalanced jury selection process, and is a champion of those who have received unduly harsh prison sentences. Todd joins us today from California. Congratulations, Todd, and welcome to the GAB Talks.
Oh, thanks very much, Gabby. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Let's just get started. You've been a criminal defense attorney for nearly 30 years. You're publishing under the pseudonym TL right now. Has there been any one influence or great inspirational moment in your life that sparked your idea and led you to take the leap from attorney to author?
I wouldn't say one moment. I always like to write creatively. And I think I realized over the course of my long legal career that being a lawyer slowly but surely saps creativity from you. You can write as a lawyer, there are writing opportunities, but it promotes a very limited, non-creative style, right? Every sentence almost has to be cited to a case or other sources. And I realized that creativity was on the wane, and I needed to change that.
So Todd, let's give our listeners a little background about the Joe Turner mystery series. Book 1, Good Looking, we're introduced to protagonist Joe Turner. Book 2, Blood Perfect, is a prequel of sorts focusing on the young Joe Turner. And book 3, I'll let you talk about that, Longtime Dead, will be available in mid-August. What is the prevalent theme of the series, if there is one?
Sure. So for people who know me, they swear that it's loosely based on my life as a criminal defense attorney. And I would admit to that, emphasis on the loosely. Joe Turner is a character who's sort of more like me in every respect, good and bad. He's more handsome. He's better in the courtroom. He drinks more. His love life is more of a shambles. All of those things. He's sort of me on steroids, which I think makes for a good character. Obviously, I draw on what is really a trove of experiences in the courtroom for a lot of my plots.
So you refer to, you describe Joe Turner, your protagonist, as a champion of the innocent. And your work as a criminal defense attorney, that seems to be the part that describes you. Is that correct?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, I not surprisingly at all, not all of the individuals who I represent are innocent, right? I mean,
of course.
For the most part, the police arrest the right person, but not always, right? And I do take very seriously the fact that I am sort of the last line of defense between a potentially innocent person and a lifetime in prison.
So what is the theme of the series? What would you say is the theme of the series? Good Looking, for example, you say, asks us how far each of us will go to protect the ones we love.
Right. Well, I think that the theme of the series is there's a great deal of focus on what it's like to be accused and facing life in prison. And I don't know that because it's never happened to me, but I have a pretty good idea, having looked through the bars of custody at people who are really, really desperate and who are facing a lifetime behind bars. And so I like to think that the series provides a pretty good look at what that's like for inmates and also for the defense attorneys who are charged with defending them.
So Todd, what percentage of the stories I know are our viewers and our listeners are interested, what percentage of the stories is actually based on your real life experiences and people in the courtroom?
As far as the plots go, I would say, none of them happened, exactly in sort of a linear fashion where I can say, this is based on this case. The beauty of fiction, right, Gabby, is that you can take the best parts of different cases, right? The most interesting parts, the most exciting parts, the most bizarre parts, and combine them into one case. And so while the plots wouldn't be recognizable as one of my former cases, if I pointed out to, say, a district attorney or a judge, I took this part, remember in People versus Higgins when this happened, they'd say, oh yeah, I do remember that.
So you can choose little pieces that might be interesting and you put them all together to create this fantastic story.
That's right. And I do the same with the characters as well, right? Once in a while, I run across a character, be they a police officer or a jailer or a district attorney or a judge. And there are elements of their personalities that I think, that's interesting. That could be a good character. And so while the characters aren't based on actual people, they're sort of an amalgamation of a lot of different people.
So tell us about the third installments in the series, Long Time Dead. You wrote this book a little bit differently than the other two. Tell us about that.
It is different. I don't know whether I sort of tired of Joe Turner, but the protagonist is not Joe Turner.
Right. He took a back seat in this one, in fact.
He did.
Wow.
Joe is involved, and but the protagonist is Joe's boyhood friend who happens to be accused of murder and becomes a fugitive and leaves the country. Joe gets involved later when the FBI is pursuing a cold case, closing in on Joe's friend, and Joe picks up the scent and helps free his boyhood friend. So my readers will certainly recognize Joe Turner. They'll recognize probably my style of writing, but it's a little something different.
So Todd, how do you recommend the books be read? Do they need to be read the way you wrote them? Good Life, Good Looking, Blood Perfect, and Long Time Dead? Or can they be read on their own?
No, they can be read on their own. They're independent stories.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Gabby, I wrote the second one that was published, Blood Perfect. I wrote that first.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, I did, and couldn't get it published, couldn't get an agent, and then I scrapped it and wrote Good Looking. That was picked up by an independent publisher in New York, and then miraculously, the first one that no one wanted, Blood Perfect, became it became good enough, and so I resurrected that one and shaped it up a little bit, and that became the first one I wrote became the second one published.
Ah, that's so interesting. So what are the most compelling characteristics of these stories that draw the reader in? Because they're good.
Well, I think that, thanks. I think that I try to build suspense for one. I think it's a real art to be able to do that throughout the course of a story. And hopefully I'm getting better at that as I write. Also, in each of the stories, there's a real old-fashioned mystery with lots of potential suspects and lots of red herrings and twists and turns. And so as the suspense builds for the characters that hopefully the reader cares about, there's also this mystery going on the reader can try to solve right along with Joe Turner.
The series, as we know, deals with a lot of serious stuff, mainly murder. But in spite of this, Todd, you managed to infuse some humor in there. Which scene was the most fun to write, or do you have a favorite book?
I think that I don't have a favorite book, but I try to inject humor as much as I can. Good Looking has a number of scenes where there's sort of funny repartee between Joe and his office mate, who is a personal injury attorney.
Mm-hmm.
He makes fun of Joe because he represents a bunch of criminals, and Joe makes fun of him because all his clients walk around in neck braces,
right?
And they sort of like criticize each other's law practice. And I found that given the subject matter, right, you pointed out it's serious, and the police reports are often depressing and sometimes gory and pretty heavy stuff. You need a sense of humor, right?
Sure.
If you can't find the humor in that, then I don't think you'll be long for the field of criminal law, be you a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney.
Well, you know that from experience for sure. So a little humor. I'm going to add that right now. If this could be made into a Netflix series, who would in your mind would play Turner?
Gosh, I don't know. I haven't given that much thought. When I write, I have to say I imagine myself, in the character as I write it. Sadly, I can't act, so that would be an impossibility. But I don't know. I probably picture some young, super good-looking guy, like the dashing Latin guy who plays the Lincoln lawyer. I can't think of his name.
Oh yeah, I love that show. That's a good one because he does have a sense of humor also. That's a good one. So as far as collaborating, would you ever consider collaborating with another author? And if you could, who would it be and why?
Hmm.
It could be a dream. It could be a dream collaboration.
Yeah, collaboration. Probably my favorite writer in this genre is Louise Penny. I mean, I just think she does such a wonderful job of incorporating real literary skill, incredible descriptions, character development, the whole 9 yards, and is also a great storyteller. So yeah, collaboration. If I could I could maybe write a couple paragraphs and she could do the rest. That would be ideal.
And that's not really a collaboration, Todd, is it? At all.
No, it's not.
So you alluded to it being difficult to getting your book published, and then you turned to an independent book publisher. What has been the biggest obstacle you've faced writing the series, particularly as an independent author?
I have to say that not getting published initially was very trying, right? I mean, I remember writing the last sentence of Blood Perfect, the first one I wrote, Gabby, and I, put the period on the end of the last sentence, and it was, you're welcome, world. There you go.
Yeah, you were pretty proud of yourself and impressed, aren't you?
Very proud of myself.
Yeah.
Very, very impressed with myself. And then the rejection started rolling in, and it was, very difficult to not be affected by that. And eventually, doubts creep in, and you go back and read it, and you think, oh man, this is kind of a giant piece of crap here. What have I done? So that was very difficult, and I was not exposed at all to the business of publishing. And what I have learned over the years, now that I've been doing this, is that unfortunately there are lots and lots of really talented writers. Many, no doubt, much more talented than I, that wasn't ever lucky enough to get published. When you sell a book, as you know, what you are selling is a one-page sort of synopsis of your book. It's a pitch to an agent or a publisher.
Mm-hmm.
These are agents and publishers who receive hundreds of these a day. And you could have the best book ever written, but if your pitch doesn't spark their interest, then, it's in the circular file. So by far my biggest challenge has been, before I was lucky enough to get published, was to sort of hang in there and keep writing because I love to write, right? Sort of a reminder that the reason why I write is because I love it so much. It's not because I can get the independent press award or publish with a big publisher. So
you're enjoying it. So is that a big piece of advice that you could offer aspiring authors, to just keep writing, keep trying?
No question. Keep and realize that you can improve your writing, right? I remember when I became a criminal defense attorney, I refused to believe that experience had anything to do with it, right? I was very confident in my ability in front of a jury. I'd look at these experienced attorneys and think like, that guy, I'm better than that guy. And he was just as bad as he was his first day he practiced law. 30 years later, I realized that I'm a much better attorney than I used to be. And it's the same with writing. So my advice would be to keep writing because you love to write. not for any sort of end game. And also, when someone criticizes your writing, you can toss your notepad down and throw a pen at the computer screen and get mad about it. But after you do that, go back and look at what the criticism was, because usually it makes some sense.
What would you say to aspiring mystery, thriller, crime fiction writers? What would you offer to them as the most critical element in any of those in that genre when writing a story?
Sure. So I'll throw out a lesson that I learned early on. Realize that in that genre, you're about advancing the plot of the story, right? I took great pleasure early on in my writing career in explaining the nuances of legalities or, all the tricks of the trade in the courtroom. But mystery readers and readers of crime fiction in every subgenre, they want to hear the story. Right? They want to know what happens next. They want a twist. They want a turn. They want a red herring, a plot. So concentrate on that. And whether you're a defense attorney or you're a prosecutor or you're a retired police officer, realize that expertise is going to come through naturally in your writing. So you don't have to make that the centerpiece.
Which leads me to my next question. What's the biggest mistake that you can make as a writer in this genre?
Well, let's see. I think, piggyback on that idea, the biggest mistake would be to, inundate the reader with whatever your particular expertise is at the expense of a good plot or a good story. Also, I think you have ideas as a writer when you start, right? And I found from experience that the best stories, I have an outline, but if I'm halfway through and I get an idea, hey, maybe this could happen to this character, or maybe the story could take this turn, those are always the best. And they take more work, right? Because you might have to scrap the rest of your story. You might have to insert a chapter early on. The message would be, take the chance, do it, spend the time on it, keep polishing it, because you want the best end product possible.
Todd, will our listeners and viewers be surprised to know about T.L. Bequette?
Well, they'd be surprised to know about me. That's an interesting question, because if they assume, like a lot of the people who know me assume, that Joe Turner is based on my life, they would be surprised to know what a boring life I lead, right? I mean, being a criminal defense attorney is, there are plenty of days where I sit in court waiting for my case to be called where nothing happens, right? There are plenty of run-of-the-mill cases that, there's nothing at all interesting about them. I have plenty of relationships with district attorneys that are completely pleasant, right? The DA's not always the bad guy. Not every cross-examination of a police officer, ends with me getting them to admit they lied. So, it's a pretty, it's a boring existence. And that's maybe why I need fiction to spice up my life a bit.
That's okay. It's pretty exciting. So your debut novel, Good Looking, was published in 2021. Then you came out with your second novel, now your third. You're on a roll. What's next? Are we going to see more of Joe Turner? Are you exploring other genres? What should we hope for?
Certainly more Joe Turner. I have a couple other stories in the hopper, and ideas for at least a couple more of those stories. But lately, I've been sort of noodling around with the idea of trying my hand at something a little bit more substantial in the genre of maybe literary fiction. And that's different, right? Because it's a more character-driven novel as opposed to commercial fiction, which is plot-driven. And I find myself, as I type, thinking like, boy, this could be terrible, honestly. So I'm going to take sort of a big swing at sort of more substantial novel and see how that goes.
Well, you can take your own advice, which was take the chance, keep polishing, and maybe something really good will come out of it.
Thanks, Gabby. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Finally, Todd, where can our readers, listeners, and viewers learn more about you and purchase the Joe Turner Mystery Series?
Sure. First and foremost, you can purchase any of the books on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com or Apple Books. If you want a digital copy, you can order a paperback there as well. And you can learn more about me at tlbeckett.com. So, yeah, I hope everyone goes out and enjoys the Joe Turner Mysteries.
They sure will. Do you have a copy of one of the covers that we can show our viewers?
Sure. Here are the first two.
Fantastic.
Good Looking Blood Perfect. The third one is out August the 17th.
Long Time Dead. Great. We look forward to it. Fantastic. Well, Todd, it was really a pleasure chatting with you today. Look forward to reading many more books to come. Long Time Dead, again, is available on August 17th. This is your hostess, Gabby Olzak of the GAB Talks. Until next time, keep on reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much.